an hour. So I'm like, yes, let's go. Here we are. I always try. It's really hard sometimes during the day just because of my schedule. And so anytime that I get a chance, shoot, I'm in. Like,
that's awesome.
yeah.
I love that. I just
Yeah.
saw this on the morning news this morning. They were talking about Luke Bryan going to farms. Have you seen this? He's doing a
Yeah.
tour of farms.
Yeah.
I thought that was beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. He is a very like from I know some people that know him, and he is a very down to earth guy, and he loves the connection of like just regular folks. Like even though he's like crazy successful, he's yeah. So hey, Mark.
Hi.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I did it much easier this time.
Yes. Yeah. I was trying. So the link that you had the first time was kind of like a universal link, but kind of still the same process. So now that you're a member, it probably just makes a little more sense.
All right. It's like the fast track. This is like the pre-check lane.
Yeah, exactly. So I am recording. Okay. We're not,
Yes.
that is not going to happen anymore.
Right.
Hi, Benji. Hi, Carrie.
Hi.
If you all have not met Benji yet, he's a fairly new member in the Boston area, and he is definitely worth talking to.
Hi, everybody. And I'm a Batman nerd, so I'm excited for this.
Well, there's room for both of us on this.
I can't believe you scheduled my ultimate session right away after I joined the group. This was meant to be.
I'm happy to hear that.
Maybe it was like this. You could see it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm waiting for Gabe Lullo to show up. He's a brand new member, and he just about lost his mind when he saw this was on here. And he was showing me pictures of his license plate and his in the background of his, of his office, the bat signal and all the. I mean, yeah. Unless he's locked in the bat cave, I'm assuming he will be here. Hi, Kim.
I spoke this week actually.
Hello.
So. Hello.
Oh, you did get to speak to him?
Yeah,
Great.
thanks to you. We connected. It was lovely.
Awesome. Well, he's from Buffalo. He lives in Buffalo, and I am in Buffalo currently to see my family. And we were trying to get together, but my family's Italian, so there's not a lot of leash. I don't get to go too far.
Mm-hmm.
So not this time. But I brought my parents, their first and only great-grandchild to meet in person. And so it's been this beautiful. So as soon as we brush our hair, which I have not yet, we're going to get a picture of 4 generations.
Wow.
4 generations in the house.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
My mom was just so happy. So really.
We have one of those in our family, and I'm the baby in it. I'm the little baby in that photo, and it is treasured.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, I don't want to keep you, Mark. So it's up to you. We can wait another minute or two. I was just saying to Arlen that I always make fun of Scott for panicking when nobody's on the call. And because he's away, he's out in Philly for an event with Marnie Schneider to honor her mom. That I was on by myself, and I was panicking. So it's always great to experience things from a different perspective.
Well, no need to panic. Everybody seems calm. I don't mind to wait a minute more to see if more people come on, and then we can start whenever you want, and maybe people will trickle in.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell people when we do our onboarding calls, and I'll say it to everybody again too, is just come in late, leave early, do whatever you need to do to get a little bit, as much as you can. And also something that's been surprising me on those calls is when I mention the RSVPs in Circle. So feel free to, the RSVP is for you and not for me. So if you say you're coming and you don't, that's okay. Or if you say you're not coming and you want to, that's okay. It's really just the function of getting the reminders and everything. So that's been something that keeps coming up for people. Carrie's dog. I can hear your dog.
Oh, that's actually not mine. That's probably from a couple houses away. I'm sorry.
Oh, how funny. Wow.
It's a loud dog.
Technology can pick
How
up
long is
things.
that dog?
Because my dog is, you can't hear, I can't hear my dog. She is the stealth queen.
Nice.
And Marc Nobleman, you're able to, hi, Teresa, you're able to share, you've got the share function and everything. So if you need to.
I see it. I haven't tested it yet, but I can see that it's popping up. So I think it'll be good.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started. You can all thank me later for not recording our last call with Marc, which prompted us to do a bit of a redo, but also find this date on the calendar, which I'm sure Marc will talk more about. And I have to admit, I have celebrated National Batman Day all alone for many, many years. And now I finally have a community to celebrate it with. So Marc, I will not steal any more of your time. I will let you just have at it.
Thanks. Well, lovely to be with you all again. If you heard this in July, it's going to be a bit different today, but just as twist-filled and surprising. So I will tell you a story. And when I'm done, I'd love to talk about it. If you have questions, comments, any comment whatsoever, I'd love to hear it. But I'll just tell it to you straight up as if, this was a very low budget Netflix production. So I'm going to share my screen. You've seen enough of me. Let's see. Here we go. So you all see a bat symbol? I don't see you. So Yep. Good.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, as you heard, my name is Marc, and I am an author of books primarily for young people, but often for all ages, like the book that prompted this discussion. So I grew up loving superheroes, particularly DC Comics superheroes. And when I was in my formative years, there was a team called Batman and the Outsiders. Not a team that probably anybody here but Benji has ever heard of, but it was formative for me. And since we are a very special group, I've taken the liberty of modifying this a bit. Now today it's going to be Batman and the Outliers. And I just chose a few random heads from the Outlier site, including Kathy and Scott, to represent that. So I'm going to tease you with 3 numbers. There is no way that you can figure out what these are about, but we'll come back to them at the end. So the story starts back in the Great Depression. Batman debuted on the cusp of the Depression and World War II. And the book I wrote about him has only one line on the back cover. Batman's biggest secret is not Bruce Wayne. So I'm imagining that everyone who's here is on some level a superhero fan, but if you're just a fan of a good story, then I'll tell you Bruce Wayne is Batman's secret identity. That's his real name. So I'm saying my secret is bigger than that. And it has to do with this. Every Batman story since the first had only one name in the credit line, Bob Kane. Bob was an artist. Here's Bob. And here's the thing about that credit line, Batman created by Bob Kane. It is not true. There was another from day one. His name was Bill Finger. He was the original writer and therefore the co-creator of Batman. But again, Bob and Bill arranged that only Bob would be credited. Bob would get paid by the company, DC Comics, or what became DC Comics, and would pay Bill some portion of that. But Bill was essentially anonymous, a ghostwriter, which was not uncommon in those days, but very few characters turned into Batman. So I think that's where the difference lies. So I will show you a recreation of what Batman almost looked like. If they had gone with Bob Kane's vision, this is what we would have gotten. And frankly, we wouldn't know Batman today because this would not have endured 80 plus years. So Bill, the writer, was the one who said, I think the name Batman works, but we got to revisit the design. So Bill made some suggestions and Bob took them all, redrew Batman from this to this. his first appearance. So again, Bob drew it, but Bill wrote it and designed it, yet the only name there right on the front, right from the start, was Bob's. So this in and of itself would be obviously a tremendous legacy. But Bill also went on to write the first appearances of Robin, the Joker, the Penguin, star of an Emmy-winning HBO series now, Catwoman, the Riddler, characters that are now almost as iconic as Batman himself. The example I always give is you could stop a random senior citizen in any supermarket, which I'm not necessarily advising, but if you were to do this and say, name the first thing that comes to mind about Batman. First, everyone would have something. Whether they've ever read a Batman story or seen a Batman film, everyone knows something about Batman through attrition, cultural attrition. And chances are that person would name something that Bill Finger created, one of these characters that you just saw, or any of the following that he also contributed. The name Bruce Wayne, the name Dick Grayson, that's Robin, the name Gotham City, the nickname The Dark Knight, which was so famous that one of the Batman movies was called only The Dark Knight. His name, the word Batman wasn't even in the title. The Batcave, Commissioner Gordon, Batgirl, Scarecrow. There's the Batcave. The other thing was Batman's origin, but it was there too. The Batmobile, the original Batmobile, and so much more, all anonymous, at least until 1965. So again, 25 years after Batman debuted, a fan named Jerry found out that Bob Kane was not doing all this by himself. So Jerry was very enterprising. He reached out to the company and said, who's really writing and drawing all this? There's been a new selection of Batman stories every month for a quarter century, and one person can't possibly be doing it all. So the company back in those days would write you back and told Jerry that, yeah, there's a lot of people working on Batman, and the name that Jerry saw the most was Bill Finger. So Jerry found Bill and asked for an interview. This would have been the first time in Bill's career because the public had never heard of the guy. So Bill told the truth about how Batman really began. He did not say nasty things about Bob. He simply said what his role was. But when Bob found out, he was not happy. Jerry's interview turned into a 2-page article, if you want to call it that he then mimeographed. Some of you of a certain age will recognize this color scheme from the 70s school. And he mailed this out to Batman fans all over the country. That was his Facebook. That was his way of spreading the word as quickly as possible. And so again, Bob, the artist, was not happy that the myth of Bob Kane was slowly becoming exposed. So Bob wrote a 6-page letter, 6 pages, in which he said, I, Bob Kane, am the sole creator of Batman, again and again and again. He was quite narcissistic, as you can imagine, talked about himself in the third person sometimes, not unlike some public figures that we all know about today. So that was 1965. And within 10 years, sadly, Bill Finger was dead. So in his lifetime, he saw his name on a first-run Batman story only a single time. It was a big deal, though. It was the Batman TV show of the 1960s. He was the only comic book writer to make the leap to that series, to TV. But that didn't take away the neglect and the omission of his name on the hundreds of Batman stories that he wrote for comics. So it's obviously a cultural and a human tragedy. On top of that, when he died, he had no obituary except for this short article that was published in a comic book magazine, something that most people never saw. He also had no funeral and no gravestone. So it was almost like the man who created Batman just vanished into the shadows, like Batman often does in stories. I found a friend of Bill's named Charles, also sometimes a creative partner. And Charles's brain was a steel trap. He remembered things from 30, 40, 50 years ago that checked out. So I asked Charles why Bill had no funeral. And Charles said, Marc, we do not want to talk about that. So I said, I get it. I know it's difficult, but I have to ask. So Charles said he thought that Bill was buried in what's called a potter's field, which I didn't know about at the time. It's a graveyard with no gravestones for people who do not have family to take care of you. The potter's field for people who die in New York is on Hart Island in Long Island Sound. And you can't just go there. You need permission from the city. And of course, a boat. It's an island. So before I tried all of that, I went online to look it up, which brought me down. The thought of Bill Finger, or anyone, ending up here after an already hard life was heartbreaking. So let's compare this to Bob Kane's final resting place. Bob the artist died 25 years after Bill, 1998. And here in Los Angeles is Bob's grave. So we are not going to read the epic novel, and you'll note on the right that the gravestone lists 10 attributes that Bob claimed he shared with Batman, including compassion, integrity, and a love of all mankind. So we hear the term fake news all the time these days, and we have for the last decade. So this would qualify. But as you all know, you can put whatever you want on your tombstone. If you want to say that you invented macaroni and cheese, go right ahead. No one's going to fact check you. And so this stands. Now, while all this was happening, well, at least the second half of the story, I was just living my kid life. Here I am with my family. And as you can see, I'm on the right and I'm holding a comic book, not atypical. For those of you that are really into the granular level of this, that was Batman and the Outsiders #6, 1984. I'm sure some of you do remember it. And it wasn't just reading comics. I also wrote unauthorized Batman stories, fan fiction, as they now call it. Not only that, I would force my friends to read this and force them to write a comment at the back. So I'm not saying that I invented the comment section on the internet, but I was doing it in 1989. So I'll leave that with you. And it wasn't just reading and it wasn't just writing. It was also, unfortunately, and you can look away if you want, dressing up. So I knew that I could not pull off Batman. I don't have the jawline or the voice or the physique for that, but I knew that I could be Robin, sidekick material. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then everything changed in 2002 because I saw an article in a now defunct comic book magazine called Wizard, which talked about the creation of Batman, in particular, this guy, Bill Finger. And again, I'd grown up reading Batman stories. I'd never heard of that name. It wasn't in any of those comics. So I thought, this is quite something, that the guy behind a character who fights for justice did not get justice in his career, in his cultural contribution. And I was also surprised that more people were not talking about this. So I took it upon myself to do some research. I was already in the middle of a book on another superhero that some of you may know, named Superman. So that book came out and spurred me on to then keep going with the Bill Finger research. And here are a few of the startling things I discovered. You saw this photo before of Bill. This was one of the photos that I saw when I launched into the research. And I'll show you all of the other ones that I found in print or online. So this is, again, circa 2006. Batman is one of the most iconic fictional characters of any medium of all time. And here are all the photos I found of his co-creator. This one, and this one, and that's it. You probably saw where I was going with that. So I reached out to experts, comic book editors, historians, professors. I asked them all the same thing. Where are all the photos of Bill Finger? And they all had the same answer. These are the only 2 I've seen. And 2 people said, Mark, these are the only photos of Bill that exist, which I now know is a hasty thing to say. What that really means is these are the only photos of Bill that we know exist. There could be more. Maybe we have not looked hard enough yet. So I set out to do that. And from 7 sources over 9 months, I found 11 more photos of Bill. None in print, none online. One was published, however, but in a 1941 comic book, Green Lantern #1. Some of you, maybe most of you, have heard of Green Lantern as well. Bill Finger co-created Green Lantern as well, but Bill Finger's name was not on Green Lantern as well. That was one of the only times. And if you zoom in on that photo of Bill, top left, you can see that you cannot see. And the next photo of Bill that I found was even worse. I found this photo because I found this woman, Bill's second wife, named Lynn. So Lynn told me they weren't photo people. That was, believe it or not, the only photo she had of Bill. Second marriage, 1960s. But I soon found more, including this photo of Bill with his first wife in the 1940s. Bill and his only child, his son Fred, at the Bronx Zoo, 1950s. Again, Bill's in the shadow. Bill in the 60s, the one standing. And if you're wondering if I found any good photos of Bill, like where you can see the guy, maybe Bill in his backyard, let's say mowing the lawn, maybe with no shirt on. Well, yes, I did, which proved to be the best one because he's in the daylight, which is great for an illustrator. You can see his features clearly, more features than you bargained for, but still, it was a great photo. Now, the first photo I looked for, I thought I'd find in 5 minutes because it's a photo that just about every American has, a high school yearbook photo. Contacted Bill's school in New York and they said they'd never found it, which seemed odd. So I went there and looked through old yearbooks for people with the last name Finger, which I found, yet none first name Bill. So the school seemed to be right. I was confused and disappointed, two common feelings during research. And I left. And then I was again speaking with Lynn, Bill's second wife, and she told me something that she was probably the only person left to know, which was that Bill was not his real name. His birth name was Milton, but he did not like that, so he changed it after he graduated. I told that to the school, and this is what they emailed back. Bill Finger before he was Bill Finger, which means I looked right at him, and so did they. So I also found something unusual and interesting about the alleged gravesite, namely that it is not true, like so many things in this story. It turns out that Bill actually ended up here on the other side of the country. That's the state of Oregon. And I know this because in my research, I found two people who did not know each other, but separately told me the same story they had heard 30 years before. This is what they said. They said that Fred, Bill's son, that boy at the zoo, grew up, lived near that beach, took his father's ashes to that shoreline and spread them on the sand in the shape of a bat. And we almost lost this story. If I did not play hide and seek, as I call it, find certain people, ask certain questions, this memory would have died with them. They were not writing it down. It is my reminder almost daily to never hesitate when I have a question that I want to ask. Even if I think it's one question too many, if I'm annoying someone, if I should already know the answer, I don't hesitate because you never know if the answer might change something for the better. So all of this research, these ups and downs, these dead ends and small victories led to a book which came out in 2012. The last line of the book, or rather the last couple of lines, are these. From Milton to Bill, from salesman to Batman, from secret co-creator to unsung legend, Bill's most important story was not one he wrote, but the one he lived. Will his name ever be added to every Batman story? Batmanians are keeping their fingers crossed. 2 points on word choice. Batmanian is an actual word. I didn't make that up. Not that I would be ashamed of that. That was used going back to the 60s, maybe earlier. And I capitalized finger here as a pun. Not a big pun person in general, but Bill used puns, so I used puns to pay tribute to Bill. Now, the book came out, and I promoted it not just as a book, because it was part of my portfolio, and that's what authors are supposed to do. But I had this larger mission, hoping that the book might help build a groundswell of support and maybe change things for Bill, whom I never met, of course. So I had the privilege of doing a TED Talk on a very intimidating night. There were a bunch of other people there doing TED Talks the same night as me. We were placed in random order. My talk was right after the guy who invented a $5 test for prostate cancer. Apparently, prior to that, it was much more expensive. I don't remember how much, but much more. And that in and of itself is massively impressive. But the person who invented it was 15 years old. So I had to follow the 15-year-old super medical genius with a talk about superheroes. But I persevered. I rallied. I did dress up as Robin one more time for the book trailer for the book. And I promise that's the last you'll have to see of that. And I also made it my business to try to get DC Comics to do the right thing, short of any kind of major legal action or, anything like that. So I did it in very simple, old-fashioned ways. I emailed one of the heads of the company in 2007, before the Dark Knight film came out. That was in 2008. So I wrote to this person and asked if Bill's name could be credited or included in the credits. This is the actual email. And I was very clear to say, I know that they wouldn't use a label, a title like co-creator, because that is subjective, but rather just simply give him credit for writing the story in which the term The Dark Knight first appeared. That is a statement of fact. And that's also easily provable. Plus, DC Comics already gave Bill writing credit on reprints for that very story. So I thought this was completely fair and legit. Of course, I did not expect a response, but to this executive's credit, I got a response. And here it is in full. Thanks for your passion for our creators and characters, but there are no plans to credit Bill on The Dark Knight. Fair enough, but I don't take no easily when it comes to things like this. So I wrote back and just made it clear that I wasn't asking for a label, but rather just giving him credit the way that they do in reprints. And he wrote back in full, with all due respect, I'm not having this discussion. So the biggest discovery, the biggest change has to do with Fred, Bill's son. You might recognize that hill and beach behind him because you've just been there. Now, this was one of the only photos of Fred that I found. I know, not great, super dark, super 70s, but you work with what you find. And when I started the research, I learned 3 things right away about Fred that would change the course, not only of my little book, but of something way bigger than that. I learned that Fred was Bill's only child. I learned that Fred was gay. And I learned that Fred died in 1992, which implied to me that he was the last member of the Finger family. So I wrote a book about this. I speak about it around the world to audiences of all ages. But if I want to change that credit line, I need to do more than that. I need family. And it looked like I was 15 years too late. So you can imagine my surprise when I learned that 2 years after Bill died, his son Fred here had a daughter, which meant Bill had a granddaughter, which meant Batman had a chance. So I again rolled up my sleeves to find Athena, the only known heir to Bill Finger, which means the only person with legal standing to challenge that credit line. I could post and talk and write about it till I'm blue in the face, but legally the company won't bat an eye, stupid pun, halfway intended, unless there is a relative challenging it. So I found Athena on this site that you may remember in the deep recesses of your brain. It's called MySpace. That dates the research here. And at first, she did not want to pursue this. She just thought it was too daunting. And I totally get it. Batman is owned by DC Comics, which is owned by DC Entertainment, which is owned by Warner Brothers, which is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, which is a massive multinational conglomerate. So what are we going to do? Call the main 800 number and say, yeah, who do we talk to about correcting a credit line? Doesn't work like that. So I can understand why it was daunting. Batman is, according to Wikipedia, one of the most lucrative franchises of all time. And I'm not challenging this. I totally think this information is accurate. This is not the top 5. There's some above Hello Kitty, including Mickey Mouse and Pokemon. This is just what fits on my screen. You can see Batman is nearly a $30 billion property. I was surprised to see that Hello Kitty is worth more, but I think you can't underestimate the power of Japanese. It's not manga, but the Japanese fandom is huge. So I shouldn't be surprised, but I admit that I was a bit. So the biggest change came literally 10 years ago today. We were building on to this over the course of my entire research and the process of promoting the book, a 9-year journey. And 10 years ago today, DC Comics announced that they would finally add Bill's name to the credit line. So Bill Finger worked anonymously, as you heard, for his whole 25-year career. Would have never seen his name in a headline. But then within a 24-hour period, depending on your feed, his name was almost everywhere that you looked. Just too late for Bill. So now that credit line is different, whether it's a Batman comic book, video game, TV show, or movie. They all now say Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And this story, unprecedented in history, inspired a Hulu documentary, which is still available. And you can see that guy in the bottom right in the shadow. That is me. I am in this documentary. I am not doing accents. I am not doing stunts, of course. I'm just talking about Bill like I've done right now, along with many other people. You just heard a lot of the story, but not all of it. There's some tears in the movie and some other twists that I didn't get to here. And I'll leave you with one last footnote to this, which was that the same year that this movie came out, another one of my efforts came to fruition, probably because of the movie. I had been petitioning for years to do something for Bill in New York City, where he co-created Batman. I wasn't able to convince the Parks Department to discuss a statue, and I wasn't even proposing a statue of Bill, but rather maybe something interpretive. But still, that was a non-starter for them. But we were able to do this. On a cold morning in the Bronx, a bunch of people gathered to celebrate the unveiling of the first ever street renamed for a comic book creator in New York City, which is the unofficial headquarters of superheroes, both in fiction and in history, because that's where the publishers started out. So they made 2 signs. One they had mounted the night before, and one that I got to hold for 10 seconds and then give to Athena, Bill's granddaughter, belongs. So that in and of itself was just a huge moment of satisfaction and gratitude. And on top of that, a few days after that, the story made the New York Times, which in and of itself is maybe not so notable, except for the fact that Bill co-created this iconic character in New York and was not mentioned in the New York Times a single time in his lifetime that I know of, and only once after until this day, which is staggering. Someone of his cultural impact could not be noted more often in the paper of record for that city. So that was super cool for me to see. And on top of that, shortly after, a guy named Marc Hamill tweeted about it. So it's piling geek upon geek. For those of you that are not as geeky as myself, Marc Hamill is otherwise known as Luke Skywalker. And depending on your generation, you might also know him as the voice of the Joker in the 1990s Batman animated series. So, my geek brain pretty much exploded that day. And then a few months later, I picked up the pieces of it, put it back in my head, and then it exploded all over again when Marc Hamill tweeted, not about Bill Finger specifically, not about the movie or the credit change, but about my book, which I would have not even thought would be on his radar. So I was extremely grateful for him to help spread Bill's legacy. Now for our big ending, back to those numbers. No way for you to guess what they were. It's just a little tease. So those numbers represent one way of looking at all the rejections that I experienced along the way in this process. Not in any order here, really, but the movie took 9 years to make, and there were 2 aborted attempts. 2 different companies gave us a little bit of money to shoot some footage, and then for different reasons backed out. The street sign, something as simple as a street sign, took 6 years of back and forth, dealing with bureaucracy, trying to get someone to see the vision. And the book took, well, it took a few years to research and write, but I went through 34 rejections to see it published. 34 editors said, no thanks. One of them said, well, I like Batman and my son loves Batman, but I just don't know who the audience for this is. And I'm thinking, well, you just said it yourself. You, your son, and I don't know, the billions of people that watch Batman movies, read Batman comics, stream Batman content. I mean, it's not a hard sell if you ask me. So I'll end with one of many, many tweets that this whole journey has gotten. I've been so touched by literally hundreds of them. But this one, in such an economy of words, really spoke to me, and not just with this story. One voice changes everything. So it wasn't one voice, obviously. I mean, Bill was the original voice, and then there were many fans along the way, and Bill Finger's family and people in the industry that supported this movement. And I was just the loudest. I was just the most obnoxious. But it just goes to show you that, yeah, it does take someone doing that to make a change. I don't have to tell outliers that. It is a single voice that starts every single movement in history. I mean, I'm not comparing myself to anyone else, but I'll just give another example that I think is really, it brings this to light in a really strong way, especially for kids. Rosa Parks. She was alone on that bus. She was not trying to make a stand. She was not being filmed for a documentary series. She had no clue that she was on the verge of history. She just was fed up, and she spoke her mind, and she took action. And that was the tipping point that led to all the things that happened after that. So that is why that saying, one voice changes everything, resonates for me so strongly, not because of anything I've been involved with, but because of all the people in history that have changed things away from the glare of the spotlight, not trying to necessarily make these big changes, but knowing that they had to speak up, for at least for their own dignity. And that's how it started. So thanks for your patience listening to that. I tried to keep it tight, but it is a pretty long story. So again, thank you so much. And if you have any questions or comments, let's do it.
We may ask for a third time because that was fun. That was really
as many
fun.
times as you want.
Utterly compelling. Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Everybody, yeah, I was going to say, everybody come off your mute and just chime in. Ask away.
I have multiple questions. I'm resisting because I don't want to just stump in and steal the rest of the time. Can I ask one though?
You can ask as many as you want, Benji. That's what we're here for.
Okay, so I'm thinking like big picture here. Okay, so my brain being a story brain, I want to know what's the one thing you did that finally got justice in the end, the final lightsaber blow. And you're probably going to say it wasn't just one thing. So then let me nuance the question and say, what have you learned, and what would you advise other people who want to get a massive corporation that doesn't care to do justice, to change and do something? Like, when you look back, what are the things that were effective, and what are the things that were like, nah, I was putting pressure at the wrong place, that wasn't going to work? What have you learned? So, Benji, I think that without a family member, this probably wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. So if I hadn't found Athena and she hadn't been willing to fight this, then it might have just been something that got a lot more attention, but never actually changed officially. So that was the single biggest moment in the research, was finding that there was an error and that she was still around and that she was willing to do this. And as far as trying to appeal to companies, I mean, we all know companies are not people. They don't have emotions. I think now more than ever in the current climate, I mean, we all see on a daily basis how delicate everything is and how everything's a tinderbox. So I think, I was lucky that this all happened when it did. I don't know if it could have happened now, frankly. We'll never know. But I mean, I would just apply the same process to any pursuit now that I did with this, which is just be civil, be persistent. And if you believe in what you're doing, then don't give up. That's persistent. I mean, you just have to, because you're going to get, we all know this, you're going to get shot down constantly. I mean, people told me in my face, dude, you seem like a nice guy and I agree with what you're doing, but you're wasting your time. Some people even went so far as to say, you're making a fool of yourself. You look like a fool because there's no way this is going to happen. And I said, I would feel more like a fool if I didn't try, actually. Yeah.
if I thought it could be done and I didn't try.
That's awesome. Do you think that she was like, was it, I'm wondering, I get it intuitively, but I'm wondering what it was about Athena being involved. Was there like a legal pressure that she could bring that you couldn't, or was it more the human sense of like, oh, this is a person who's asking us to our face?
Well, if you see the documentary, you'll see that, DC acted very corporate at times and tried to get by doing as little as possible to smooth this situation over. But then there came a point where they realized, they can't do that anymore. I mean, Athena turned out to be a fighter on this, but I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I understand, you do need to be an heir to challenge something like this legally. It doesn't mean that we couldn't have done a change.org petition and gotten 1 million people to sign it and maybe they pay attention, but they don't have to. And it does become a PR thing too, right? I mean, they to some extent don't want to look bad, but I think, again, in the current climate, I think companies are that's less of an issue now. I mean, I won't start naming specific examples, but we've all seen big companies caving in ways that I find morally objectionable. But again, it's not a person caving, it's a company. And so I don't know that DC would feel that pressure now, or any company, frankly. But I do know that lots of other heirs of other characters, some of whom you've never heard of, have been coming out of the woodwork because they saw, look, if they're going to make a change for Batman, they should do right by me too.
Yeah.
They just don't want to publicize that.
I love it. And then the ripple effects go on beyond you and beyond her to other people.
Hopefully it did. Yeah. They don't, on the one hand, you'd say, why are they not promoting this? It makes them look good, but it also makes them look bad because they had to be pressured into doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a Trivial Pursuit card that needs to get updated?
There's something in the back of my mind about a Trivial Pursuit card on this, but I'm blanking. There are other things that needed to be corrected for sure. But yeah, that's a good question. I did see a crossword puzzle since all this where they said they referred to Bob Kane as the co-creator, which they didn't used to do. So people have caught on.
Nice.
Good question though, Carrie. I'm a trivia buff, so.
We'll get Alex Trebek to, we could have gotten.
Yeah, he's with Bill now.
Yes.
All right, Marc, I got one more. This
might
be, I don't know if this is your area or not. This is more of an industry question, or maybe it's a cultural question. I'm wondering how, because I read comics to this day and love them, and the writer gets top billing now. Like I can tell you, I read Scott Snyder's Batman run. I read Tom King's Batman run. I don't know that I could name all the artists on those runs. A couple of them who I admire, like they're still in there. But I'm wondering if something shifted in the industry, if something shifted culturally, that we kind of tend to think of the writer as the owner of the story now rather than the artist.
Yeah, I mean, they would obviously say that it's a partnership, but I mean, the story starts with the story. So the writer is, I mean, I'm not going to say more important, but definitely, that's cannot be discounted.
Yeah.
So I'm the same. I mean, I usually know who's writing most of the stuff the comics that I read or other things as well. I don't always remember the artists' names, but as a kid I did. I was younger. I had less competing for my attention. So I can still name all my favorite artists from my childhood. I couldn't tell you many artists now that I love.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's good. I mean, DC and comics companies in general in the 70s, right after Bill died, began to recognize this as art and not just commerce. And they started to credit these people. It was just too late for Bill.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the music industry went through some variations of that as well.
Oh yeah. And yeah, there's plenty of that. I mean, The Lion Sleeps Tonight. It comes from some, there's a tribal origin for it, but then in the 50s, some group of American singers co-opted it with no credit, I believe, and turned it into a pop hit. And then when it was going to be in The Lion King, I think they said, okay, look, now we got to course correct it. It's just, the song was already a hit, but now we're doing Disney. They have to adjust that. So they did somehow. I don't know what they did, but you can look up who should be credited for that song.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rampant in basically all the arts and really, frankly, in business too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a story about the windshield wipers, intermittent windshield wipers. There's a movie about this called Flash of Genius with Greg Kinnear. It's about 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Some random engineer came up with the idea of windshield wipers that would be different speeds depending on how heavy the rain is. So he pitched it to GM and Ford and other companies. They all said no. And then a year later, I think it was GM suddenly was using them on their cars. Didn't give him any credit or money. And he spent a devastating number of years just asking for them to publicly say, you got the idea for me. I'm not even going to sue you. Just give me the credit. He lost his marriage over this. I mean, it's like people's lives are ruined when they're not treated with the basic respect that they deserve. It's a good movie, I thought. Other thoughts, questions? Benji, you can ask more if you've got them in the hopper. And
no, those are the big ones. I mean, I'm just fascinated by the systemic aspect of this. That when art and commerce intersect, right, and also when individuals who tend to make art and corporations which tend to make commerce intersect. There's a fascinating. There's always a course correction that has to happen.
Yeah. These days, the current crop, they've learned from Bill Finger and from people like him that don't give it away.
Yeah.
Don't settle. So that's a positive that came out of it. It's a sad story, but there are positives.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of stories that our history isn't always 100% accurate. Yeah. So, like you said, it's good to keep asking questions. I think to me, I think that's a fundamental of having good conversations, of really like learning about people. Just keep asking questions and you'll learn something interesting. You'll learn something you didn't know. It's a powerful tool, asking questions.
It is. But, I don't know about you, but, when I was a kid, there was this, they didn't say that there's such thing as a stupid question. Now they would say there's no such thing as a stupid question. But I think in the 70s, it was a little more real. A teacher might say, look, you should know that. They would be a little bit more directive that you ask something that you should know better about. Yeah. So I was raised that way. Like, don't overdo it. But I turned into this person that overdoes it. And I have to overdo it because otherwise I'm going to miss stories. And I'm very I reach out a lot. And there are people that have told me, you're getting on my nerves. And I said, I'm really sorry. And then when the book comes out or the movie comes out or the story comes out 5 years later, sometimes I'll email them and say, thank you again for your patience back then. This is why. For whatever it's worth.
I don't know if Scott has mentioned this or not, but a lot of what you're saying now, Marc, is he talks about with Who's Your Oprah and building relationships and showing up the way he does and posting more than once a day. At the time, back then it was posting once a week was a lot. And then posting every day seemed like too much. And then posting and he's always said a lot of similar things to what you were just saying, because I've watched him grow and do everything that he's done over the last 10 years. And I have heard and watched other people criticize it or, say it's too much and all of the things that you're talking about. So I just appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah. Scott's a great beacon for this kind of thing. I mean, it's hard to do. We all know this, but I mean, one of my life goals, bucket list goals, is to get to the point where I really don't care what other people think. I'm making progress. I still care, but I'm trying not to because life is so short. Just do what means something to you. Don't hurt anybody and carry on.
Are you in your 50s yet? That's what happens when you hit your 50s. I feel like you start to go, who cares? And I remember being a kid when my grandmother, and I've gone back and I've done the math and I'm like, she was in her 50s when she started just like, she would walk up to anybody and start having a conversation, like an intimate conversation. She would walk up to young, like 20-something-year-old guys just to tell them that she thought he was really good looking. And I'd be like, Grandma, you can't just flirt with a 20-year-old. And she'd be like, I'm not flirting. I'm 50. Like, I'm just saying what I'm thinking. And I'm just giving the person a compliment. Like I remember when she got to that age, she was like, I don't care.
Yeah. Good.
Like I'm supposed to hold back a compliment. She was like, why would I do that?
Yeah, I know. Good for her. I am in my 50s, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. But I think there was another, I had to look it up really quick. There was the story about Henrietta Lacks, who
Yes.
in the blood donation without her permission. And they had to do a lot to finally get her credited with that too.
Yeah.
That was another like revisionist history.
Yeah. It's rampant. I know. It's unfortunate that, because of a bit of greed, a lot of people have to spend so much time just trying to get to the baseline of doing the right thing. But
it also makes me think about the nature of creative work in the first place. Like we sort of have this myth that it's always like one genius that makes, like Steve Jobs made the iPad all by himself in his garage, right? It's never that myth. It's never that. And stories work that way. Like Batman's that one guy in his story, but there's always a Robin and there's always an Alfred and there's always all these other people that make it possible.
That's true.
We're so drawn to the stories because they're simple, but they're not true.
It's true, because I think the person who gets the first significant win on it ends up just getting the credit for it. Because I think the story of the light bulb is similar, where there were so many people were on the brink of developing the light bulb all at the same time, but one person gets credit for it.
Right.
And then we tell these fake stories like, oh, where would we be without Thomas Edison? Well, it would just be Jim Faulkner, because he was about to do it too. And when they start to say like there's no really like any original ideas, I think there is something about the current environment that brings certain ideas about, and curiosity brings things about. And you see it in mythology all the time from countries that were not close to each other, or easy to get to, and they have similar stories. Like, how is that possible if we weren't, we didn't have the World Wide Web then?
Right.
So how does that happen? I think there is a certain amount of ideas that are happening simultaneously because of an environment, not because of a single person.
And in the world of dreams, so I'm a dream certified coach. So when we get into neuroscience, it can be because there's been studies on this where across cultures that were not connected, people come up with the same idea. But also I'm a high creative type. So I've had to figure out, because I've had good ideas stolen, and then you're upset, right? And it's trying to figure out, well, how do you protect yourself? And there's copyright, trademarking, but I get it.
Yeah.
I get the pain, the loss. And Marc, I love your story. It is so cool.
Thank you. So. Yeah, there's something to the collective subconscious, Georgia, about how there's a Cinderella story, as you were saying, Carrie, all over the world, long before they would have been in contact with each other. But it's the same concept. It's the same story.
Well, I can't tell you, especially, and I don't know if other families always have these type of lore or not, but so many times, and I've felt it myself as I've gotten older, my family would always be like, oh, finally someone invented that. I had that idea a long time ago and I finally created it. And I'm like, why didn't you create it? We'd be millionaires by now. But just had the idea, but finally someone created it. So yeah, I think the ideas are there. It does take a special person in certain circumstances and maybe some money and luck and influence to get it over the finish line. Which is another thing, Scott is talking about, like having the influencers on your side does make a big difference. But yeah, I think there's a lot of synergy happening in our collective brains.
I just put a quote in the chat, Carrie, based on what you just said. It's an anonymous quote. I'm sure we could find out who said it, but in my list, it's anonymous. It's just what you just said.
Yeah. It happens all the time where there's a new invention and people are like, oh, thank goodness, I've been waiting for someone to like fix that problem.
Right.
Which I think is, in a way, you could kind of take that as permission to, if you've got an idea, like run with it, because there probably are 10 other people, unlike the people who said, who else is interested in hearing a story about Batman except for me and my son?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah, I know.
If I have this problem or this curiosity, I probably am not the only one.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
And then how do you get to be the first one to the punch bowl, right?
You just have to drop. I mean, for me, I had to drop everything.
That's where your Oprah comes in.
Yeah.
Yep.
And something like this, I mean, Batman is so famous, and this was such a big secret in the background. I couldn't believe that I was the one that was doing this. I was looking over my shoulder to say, is this real that I'm the one who's finding these things out? And every time I spoke with someone and found out something that was startling, I would say, has anybody ever interviewed you about this before? And every one of them said no. I just couldn't believe it. So when I'm often asked what my next big story is, and I say, well, I have a lot of stories that I want to tell. They're all going to be good in their own way, but nothing's going to be like this. And it's not me being defeatist, it's just being realistic. This was such a confluence of high profile hook, crazy backstory, the right timing, because I was doing this when people that knew Bill were still alive at the very end of their lives in most cases. So it's just, I'm not being doom and gloom to say I'm never going to have another story like this. I'd be thrilled that this was my only story. But it's all about timing, and it's all about, finding that route that other people haven't taken. That's scary. I mean, sometimes I did question myself. Are these people right? Am I wasting my time? And I just said, well, my gut is still telling me that I believe it. So I'm going to listen to my gut.
I was just on a panel, or I wasn't on a panel, I was listening to a panel of writers the other night, and they were talking about just that there's so many factors that go into writing a story, not just a good story, but timing is such an important element in releasing a story. And they're like, sometimes we've had stories that just sit for a couple years until and then finally it's ready. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just have to stick with it.
Yeah. Very nice of you all.
That was a fantastic story. I love the way you told it. Obviously, great storyteller. I was so entertained.
Thank you. It's nice of you all to take a chance on this, in the middle of the day.
Well, it's a great positive thing for the middle of. I didn't know what to expect joining, to be honest. So this is now a highlight.
I feel like watching Batman after this.
Yeah.
Well, I did drop the links to Marc's to the documentary on Hulu, so you can find it in the chat there.
Nice.
Yeah, there's plenty more to see. So
there's more.
Thank you so much, Marc. I really appreciate you doing this.
Well, thank you, Kathy. Again, I love doing it. And if you were serious before and you want to subject more people to this, I'm happy to do it for you all anytime. And Scott's got to see that I spent, 15 minutes last night making that amateur Batman and the Outliers thing. I thought
yes. We definitely have to highlight that for sure.
Yeah.
And then get the theme song going behind that.
Yeah, if I was that coordinated, yeah. So all of you, please reach out, on LinkedIn, and hopefully we can stay in touch. If I can be any help to anybody, I'd love to be. And if any of you work with events or event planners that book speakers and you think they're open to something quirky like this, I'd be thrilled to hear about it.
I did put your speaker reel in the chat as well, Marc. And what's different since the last time you were here is that now you are an official Outlier project member. So you are definitely more accessible for everybody to reach and communicate with, which is great.
Honored to be here amongst you. Did that running event happen yet, Kathy, or that's come next week?
Which one, Marc?
The running?
We that's why I'm still disheveled. We got back on Monday.
Oh, okay. So how was it?
It was the time of a lifetime. It was physically, emotionally, spiritually, just an incredible. It was part like music festival, part wellness festival, part physical challenges. It was just a really, really, I'm still at a loss for words, apparently.
Well, that's great. I'm not surprised to hear it was so good.
I would just recommend everyone come next year, whether you want to or not, really, whether you think you're a runner. Well, you are a runner, so you have to come.
I'm an average runner. Is this
Yeah.
not a marathon, right?
So there is no contest on time and there's no designated distance. It's a 1 mile track loop. And so people can do as much as they can or want to in 8 hours. So some people did complete a marathon. Some
Wow.
people, a 5K was their big number. A bunch of people like myself, I signed up for a 5K and ended up doing a half marathon just because the
Wow.
energy is so contagious. And unlike a traditional road race where there's like a mapped out track or course, I should say, this was a 1 mile loop. So everyone started at the same place. And just depending on how fast you went, you would lap each other. But you were always with a crowd of people, not a crowd, but you were never the last one in the pack. There were always people coming by and chatting and cheering you on as they, went around. And sometimes it was you running that loop and cheering other people on. So the format of it just made it so that you wanted to stay on the track.
Where was this again?
Rome, Georgia, an hour north of Atlanta. But the other thing is that they encourage you to take breaks through that 8 hours. So at one point after the 6 miles, I got off, I went and did a cold plunge. I completely reset my body and then did the next 7 miles. So there's, you can stop and get snacks or, there's hydration. They make it very accessible.
Wow.
Sounds great. I hope to go next time or sometime.
Yeah.
I saw Lindsay Dowd had listed all these things that she learned and did there, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally have to go next year. So
Yeah,
excited.
it is. It's really something else.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the porta potties are worth seeing too.
They were extraordinary.
The porta palaces, I think they called them.
Yes. And the crew that they had working them were like, they were just so, they were involved in they did the pickle eating contest. They did the belly flop contest. You always saw one of their crew involved with everything. One of them won the beer mile, which there's a non-alcoholic version. So everything, it was like you could do anything you wanted. You could be completely alcohol free. There was beer, there were drinks, there was THC drinks, there was CBD drinks. It was like whatever you wanted was there.
So that means you're drinking and walking or running at the same time?
So the beer mile
Yeah.
specifically was done on Friday before race day. Race day was Saturday. So on Friday they did the beer mile. You had to finish. I won't say chug but you had to chug your beer. Then you could start the run. And then at every quarter of the mile, you had to chug another beer. And non-alcoholic beer was acceptable.
Right.
I'm not sure how many chose that, but yeah, it was an interesting mile.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I bet it was.
The whole thing sounds really fun.
I heard there was a dance contest where the winner got a pair of sneaks.
Yeah.
So cool.
I got to run. This was lovely. Great to meet you all.
Bye, Benji.
Bye, Benji.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, will there be a debrief on?
I was thinking about that. Yeah, just for people who are curious about coming next year, it'd be fun to just come on and share some memories. And we have a little group we had about 30 outliers that were there.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Is there going to be like a little video recap or just
So if you follow any of us on social media, that's all we're posting, like on Instagram in particular. If you follow Running Man Festival.
Okay.
And if you follow me and Scott, Lindsay, but it's possible. I'm so overwhelmed. Like I can't even keep up with the social media right now. I don't know how people do it, but just trying to connect with everybody that was there and comment and share. And it's a lot.
Well, I'm glad it was so fulfilling.
It really was. And the thing is that there were so many people that came there by themselves, which it just blows my mind. But everyone there was an outlier, had like an outlier mindset. And so you were just around people who were just really fun and like friendly and interesting, and that made it a different thing too. So
Cool. I'll have to look for the posts.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
unless anyone has any other questions, I'll let you go.
Yeah.
And if you have questions later or comments, don't hesitate to reach out through here, or probably better through LinkedIn. I'll definitely see that quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Everybody have a great day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you all. Thanks, Kathy.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.